today on reptile parasites. I am the host, Tyler France of the Chameleon Collective, and one of the experts here at Happy Dragons. And I am joined by two individuals who I hold in high regards, two people that were role models and mentors for me as I entered both the business and keeping chameleons. Jon Hill of iPardalis and Bill Strand of the Chameleon Academy. Hello, fellas. How we doing?
Doing great.
Good.
Awesome. So I'm just going to start to set the tone, go over a quick overview of what the session is going to be about, and then we're going to jump right into it. The session is going to be split up into different segments, and there will be questions for both Jon and Bill and opportunities for both of them to talk about their experience as breeders and keepers and their involvement with parasites. So before we get started, I just want to say that today we are going to be having an honest conversation. It's going to be engaging for the audience members. There's going to be an opportunity for all to ask questions. And it's going to be about reptile parasites and why every keeper should care. We're going to break down the realities of parasites' presence, and yes, even in captive animals. We are going to be sharing real-world experiences and talking openly about how keepers can stay ahead of potential issues. This is meant to be collaborative, judgment-free space, and so please come ready to participate and ask questions and be a part of a community that's working to normalize proactive reptile health. And I do want to clarify that the session will be focusing on why parasite awareness matters, not the technical how-to procedures. However, there will be resources and platforms that we will be offering to you at the end of this session where you can continue to learn how to do this yourself at home. I also want to mention that the veterinary insights today are not be coming from Jon, Bill, or myself, but Dr. Rachel Sue. She's known as the Exotic Pet Vet, I believe, on Instagram, and we will be citing her scientific published work later on in the session. So, without further ado, I want to let Jon and Bill introduce themselves. So maybe Jon, if you don't mind starting us off, and then Bill, you can follow up, and I will be sharing my screen for our presentation.
Sure. So, hi, I'm Jon. I'm the Jonathan Hill, as some of you may know me. I'm the owner of iPardalis. I've been breeding panther chameleons for, I guess, 10 years now. And I've specialized in the yellow body, blue bar, envelope as my main project. But I'd say after about 5 years of breeding captive bred animals, I started to work with wild caught. And in order to prepare for that experience, I started to screen my captive bred animals somewhere around 2020 before getting the wild caughts, because in my mind I was thinking, I got to get this, I got to develop the skills so that when a wild caught is in my care, that I have the skills to properly care for it. And so that's when I got the equipment and took the plunge into parasitology side of the hobby. So
awesome. Thank you, Jon. And Bill.
Hello. So Bill Strand from the Chameleon Academy. I've been doing the Chameleon Academy, been involved with chameleons for over 45 years. Been doing the Chameleon Academy as an outreach for the last 10 years. And my interest in parasites is, well, because when we deal with reptiles, parasites come along with reptiles, even the captive hatched ones, as we will, of course, talk about today. And so I educate, and part of that education was I wanted to tell people how to use a microscope so you could check for parasites in your own collection and keep on top of it. And so I've had a special interest in parasitology, and not just for husbandry, because it's really cool and a lot of fun. It's a total new world under the microscope.
It really
is.
Yeah, I definitely I owe it to Bill for a few Friday nights where I'm grabbing things around my house, just throwing them underneath the microscope. It doesn't even have to be reptile poop, but some plant cells are actually really beautiful to look at. So it is a rabbit hole to open up. All right. So just moving forward here, we are just going to lay out a couple facts, and then I have a question each for Bill and John. Um, it's I think it's important for reptile keepers, and I would like to think that many of us we have a love of learning, and we like reptiles not only for the reptiles themselves, but to be able to observe them, to see their natural behaviors, learn about the environment they come from, which brings a level of geography. There's this biology aspect. And so, understanding not only the external health, but also the importance of internal health of reptiles really allows reptile keepers to up their husbandry and care. So, for early detection, I'm sorry, is the best way to prevent a health crisis. And there are going to be a few ways that Bill, John, and I talk about this early detection process and what is involved in that. We're also going to be showing you some data from Dr. Rachel Sue's published source. She's going to be testing both, well, she doesn't necessarily know if she's testing for captive or wild caught species. She says that right out in the open, but we'll go over some of the numbers there. And then we're going to be talking specifically about parasites with direct life cycles. So nematodes, entamoeba, and coccidia. So there are going to be parasites that we're not covering today. And I just wanted to say that there will be certain parasites that we're focused on. And these parasites have a direct life cycle, which we will go over later. And it's important to know.
Yeah, part of the reason that we're going to focus on direct life cycle parasites is because if you have a parasite that is not direct life cycle, then you probably have a wild caught, because there's an intermediary host required for that infection to take place, and that is in Madagascar for a lot of us in the chameleon hobby, and so you're not going to be seeing those persist in captivity.
Yeah, and that actually leads me to my question for you, John. So why do captive bred animals, why are they not automatically parasite free?
Uh, well, there's a lot of reasons for that. The first being husbandry hygiene. Uh, the second being that we don't provide the same experience, like a wild experience for animals in captivity. They're kept in a small space, and these parasites have evolved to reinfect in the wild in an open space. So in captivity, the situation is such that the way that they've evolved is kind of broken, and the reinfection rate is higher. The persistence that they've evolved they've evolved persistence in that wild environment. In a captive environment means they're around for a long time. They're very difficult to eliminate entirely, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Some of it is because of resistance to common cleaners. Others have to do with the way that they essentially hide in the host. There's all there. It's the more you learn about parasites, the more you realize that it's very difficult to um, essentially eliminate all of the vectors, and and so that's why they persist in captivity, is because if you focus on one vector, maybe you've learned about, oh, they need high heat to kill coccidia, but then you realize that like Coleoimeria persist in the gallbladder. They don't shed at a regular rate. The drugs that we have don't treat them very effectively. So you could get a clean fecal, you could treat the animal, and it's still the coccidia is still hanging out in the gallbladder, ready to come in a month from when you were doing your screening. So there's certain things that I would say that just make it very difficult to get to a perfect elimination state in captivity, and it's very easy for someone to think they're doing what they need to eliminate it, and then realize that it's gonna pop back up. So the 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 captive conditions are very different from what they've evolved to do in the wild. The drugs aren't very effective, and the husbandry, I would say, we're still, like Bill has been doing more than a decade, multiple decades of work on trying to nail down husbandry to make sure that their immune system is able to fend off parasitic infections. And I would say we're still learning how to make sure that they're robust and able to defend themselves. So there's all of those factors. It's a very complicated situation, I would say.
And because there's such a complication and there's so many reasons, and this question is going to be for Bill. It's almost, I wouldn't say it's not easy to look the other way, but I could see why somebody would. So what would be the cost of ignoring parasitic issues?
Oh, the cost of ignoring it. That the cost is the life of your animal, because this parasite that has evolved to be able to reproduce in the vast forests of Madagascar. And it's sending out tens of thousands of eggs, oocyst, reproductive material that's going to go down to the forest floor. And it is the chances of any of that material making it back to the correct host. Remember, the chameleon coccidia can't infect the pigs, and the frog coccidia can't infect the bird. And so they have to get to the right host. Most of those eggs are just going to die in coccidia oocysts. They're just going to die. Even if they sit around for a year, what's the chances of them actually getting into the mouth of the correct host? And so the way the parasite makes sure that it can go on through generations is it produces an enormous amount of reproductive material. Now, what we do is we take that enormous production and we put it inside of a cage. We put it inside of the cage with the perfect host and with the food that makes the transfer happen. And so we take all of the difficulty that the parasite has in nature, and we remove all that difficulty, and we make it really easy for that parasite. And unfortunately, that means that entire production now has one target. And so, yes, the reptile can function in the wild, no problem, in balance with the parasites. But because we're bringing them out of the wild into captivity, we've changed the entire conditions that both the chameleon and the parasites are living under. And so the parasites are now in danger of overpopulating the host. And remember, the parasites don't want this either. They want the balance, because if their host dies, they die. So it's not like the parasites are trying to kill the animal. They don't want to kill the animal. But because we've messed up that whole natural balance, they are now in danger of overwhelming the host.
And if you notice Bill's framing, he likes parasites. So he's going to try to apologize for them. So we apologize in advance.
Be nice to parasites. They're cool. Now, I also want to add something about parasites, why they persist in captivity. It's not only because they overwhelm an animal. We think, okay, they overwhelm an animal and then they die. So how can they continue going on? And I just want to bring awareness that it may actually be easier for the parasite to persist in captivity than it is in the wilds of Madagascar. Because in the wilds of Madagascar, they don't have all of these hairless apes running around transferring their reproductive material between these little islands of chameleons. And just think about what we do. We go to reptile shows, we go to pet stores, and we touch things. We touch doorknobs. We touched knobs to wash our hands, and then we turn the same knob that we had with a dirty hand to turn it on. We wash our hands, and when we go touch that knob to turn it off. And so,
then we go unpack our crickets.
Who gave you those crickets?
Oh
at the
my
pet
gosh!
Store? All right.
Well, no, I'm just saying that same dirty hand. Use that same dirty hand you just used to unpack the crickets, and there's your cycle.
So we do such a good job. And you can say, but I don't I didn't touch any reptiles at the reptile show. Yeah, but did you touch the doorknob that somebody else did? Oh, I don't go to reptile shows. I only go to the pet store to buy crickets. Yeah, but what did they touch before they gave you the bag that had crickets? And it's so easy to the point where you could have actually brought coccidia oocysts into your home 6 months before you brought your chameleon home.
Yep.
And then it's sitting there waiting. And so, we can, I like to say parasites are not something that we conquer. It's something that we manage because it's part of life, even here in captivity.
Yeah. And there's one of my favorite studies was actually Stet's in 2019, where he did look at a group of wild caught and a group of captive bred animals and found a 90% prevalence rate in both groups. So that what that means is that 9 out of 10 wild caught animals had at least one parasitic infection, and 9 out of 10 captive bred animals had a parasitic infection. And this was for Pardalis, the species that I breed.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went on to just look at it and say, well, what's the difference between these two things? And it really just broke down to that initial thing that we talked about, direct life cycle versus essentially a more diverse group of parasites in the wild caught. Is a more just your direct life cycle parasites in the captive bred animals, but still a very high prevalence rate in both.
Yeah. And just
Janet's got a question. Would you suggest every month to 3 months run tests for parasites? I say if you've got a microscope, test them every week whenever you get poop. If you don't have a microscope, at least once a year is a good rule.
We're going to go over how to prepare and create an action plan for yourselves at home. So, and there will be opportunities at the end, like the last 15 minutes. If people have questions for Bill, John, myself, please fill the chat right now with questions, and we will try to run through all of those. And really to drive home some of those numbers, we also have a few data points from Dr. Rachel Sue's scientific work that she's published over here on endoparasites of pet reptiles and amphibians from exotic pet shows in Texas. Now, Bill, I know you've interviewed Rachel before on the Chameleon Academy podcast, and I'm not going to speak too much for Rachel herself, but I did want to just to note some of these numbers that she had here. So of the 283 animals that she tested, there was 58 different species. And of those 58 different species, there was an infection rate of almost 52% of all of those animals, with 56% of those infections being identified as nematodes. And it's important to note that the highest infection rate by species for the ones that she tested were turtles at 87.5%. That includes tortoises. And then we have our chameleons, our best friends right here at 87%. So I'm going to allow Bill or John to hop in here. Is there anything that I'm forgetting to note? And or is there something that people should really be aware of when reading scientific papers like this?
Well, I think the biggest thing to take away from this is that crested geckos, bearded dragons, there's no imports of those. There's no wild caughts coming in, and they have high levels of parasites. So what this is saying is we are keeping parasites going in captivity. They're nice and strong. So, no matter what you have, it's likely got not likely have parasites. It's in danger of having parasites. It's worth checking.
Yeah. Better than a coin flip in favor of, not against.
Yeah. All right. So now that we have a little bit of an understanding and we've looked at some of the data, I want to allow both John and Bill to talk a little bit about their story. And so John has conducted a survey where he has collected data from other individuals and has really kind of compiled it. So John, I'm not going to speak too much on it. I'm going to let you take the stage here. And then after Jon, Bill will discuss both his approach to educational work with the Chameleon Academy and how Parasites have changed his approach to husbandry. So, Jon, go ahead.
Sure. So I when I first started to look for parasites in my collection, and I found them, uh, it was immediately apparent that it was an ethical question for me of what do you do about it? And I was very surprised about the high rates, the prevalence, because when I initially got started, I targeted captive bred animals to avoid parasites, right? To avoid the complexity of acclimating a wild caught. And what I found when I started to look, when I got my own microscope, was that I was wrong. That there is a lot of parasites in captive animals, and as a breeder, I knew that there was a stigma associated with uh, someone getting an animal from a breeder, finding parasites, and therefore the market incentive and the cultural incentive was to stay quiet, to not talk about it, and to try to manage the problem quietly by yourself. So I immediately said that's part of the problem. In my head, I was like, what I found was was very different from what I expected, and if my customers had the wrong expectation, that was dangerous for my animals. Um, and so, from an ethical perspective, I said we've got to break that stigma. We've got to start sharing what we find, communicating with each other about what we've done to both detect and manage any parasites that we've seen, and improve on this just like we would with hydration or nutrition or any other aspect of keeping reptiles healthy in captivity. And so that's why I framed it as an ethical uh, question and started to share everything that I learned. Um, and initially, that did result in people saying things negative about me, and from a business perspective, probably wasn't the like the quote unquote best move, I guess. But I've always even in my choice to raise them individually from the very beginning, after listening to Bill, I knew that that was going to cost more, and I did it anyway. So there's been a kind of a consistent theme for me of when you have an ethical question, just answer it the way that you think it should be answered, and the business will come. Um, Hopefully. So the same goes for parasites. It's something that I think I'm very glad that there's more educational material out there. There's a community building of people with experience uh, and success stories to share, and I'm very happy to see that development and Bill's work in the area.
Yep.
But one thing I was specifically interested in with this article on coccidia, I had found coccidia, but I could see they were slightly different. They weren't all the same, but I could see they were roughly coccidia under the microscope.
Yep.
But I had a question of, well, are they all the same? And so I kind of did a deep dive into the different species that can infect Pardalis, and came up with theories about which ones could be more serious from a pathogenic perspective, and which ones are either easier or harder to eliminate in the environment, because I'd heard so many different stories in the community. Some people kind of seemed to think that coccidia were a death wish. Other people seemed to think, it's not a big deal. And I was like, how can you have these two myths or these different mythologies about the same parasite? And I had a theory that there must be different species
Mm.
involved, and the research that I did was actually, yes, there's 5 known species of coccidia that can infect Pardalis, and they all have different life cycles. They target different regions in their body, and the side effects are also different in severity. And so I haven't done enough research to say definitively what it means, but in my experience, the Coleoameria glawi have been the ones with the highest pathogenic risk, and
Mhm.
it's due to like secondary infections.
Mhm.
Um, the you can see it kind of as like a quick collapse in the animal,
Yep.
whereas with Isospora and some of the other species, they're more of a it's like if there's a serious pathogenic infection, it's a slower process. And it makes sense the more you learn about those species why that's the case. Like one is in the gallbladder, the other is in the intestine.
Yep.
And so that's part of what I set out to do, was try to do some research on those different species and come up with theories as to why we have these different stories related to this quote unquote same parasite, given that it's actually 5 different parasites.
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, back to your point about making the best business decision for you, I think when I was starting out and listening to Bill, I was listening some of his podcasts and you were on them and you were talking about your experience with coccidia and the survey that you were partaking in. And so for me, as someone that was on the outside looking in, I wanted to buy an animal that was coming from someone that was having the uncomfortable conversations to move the needle forward. And I think when, I spoke with you, it's all about your animals that you are producing and ensuring that they have the best, most optimal life, not only in your care, but moving forward. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think it's important. And I just want to note that if you are entering this hobby or you are purchasing an animal, you want to look for individuals like Jon, who are partaking in these conversations, who are doing the research, and are upping the standard bar. So, and now Bill, who is on kind of a different side. We're all in the same realm here in the reptile community, but where you have different duties, different hats that we wear. So, Bill, I want kind of you to discuss some of the cases that you've come in contact with through running the educational program, the parasite hunting course, and then how parasites have changed your approach, and then some of those people that are in the Chameleon Academy, how has it shifted the approach as a whole for the community.
So my position here in the community is of an educator, and that's where I've said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And my focus is how to get people the information they need to give better husbandry. And one of the first things that I say to do after you've got your husbandry down, first thing is to get a solar meter so you can measure UVB. The second thing is to get a microscope, because
Mm-hmm.
with a parasitic infection, if you get it before it grows, if you get it right when it starts, they're very easy to get rid of. And it's only when you start seeing external signs like, oh, my chameleon is lethargic. Well, by that time, the infection has grown to the point where the chameleon can't hide it anymore. By that time, now it's a challenge to treat. But if you treat it when you discover it, when the chameleon doesn't even notice it, you can knock those things out so quickly. And so being able to do your own fecals is a huge benefit when it comes to husbandry. So it became a focus of mine. And that's why I created the course, Hunting Microscopic Chameleon Parasites, which takes you from ground zero. You don't know anything, tells you how to buy a microscope, how to use the microscope, how to identify parasites, and how to work with your vet to get on top of the whole parasitic thing. And we're not replacing a vet. We are becoming a better partner with our vet.
Yeah, and so what does that partnership look like, Bill? Because it's always a fine balance between how much a person can do in their home, and then when is it a priority to go to the vet.
What the partnership is if you don't have a microscope, maybe you're doing a annual fecal.
Yep.
And so the vet can only take a snapshot when you bring a fecal sample into the vet's office. But if you have a microscope by yourself and you do tests on a monthly basis, you can bring in pictures, you can bring in video, and you can show the vet and say, okay, this is what I see. And the vet's going to go, ooh, okay, we need to do something. Now, if you're a client, they're going to say, okay, bring in a fecal, we want to check. And they'll probably do that anyways, because just because I see entamoeba doesn't mean that there isn't coccidia. So what it does is it allows you to come to the vet and say, there's something wrong here before there's something big that's wrong. And so you're going to be able to work with the vet. You'll understand what the vet is saying. If the vet is saying, well, okay, we're going to give you a sulfa drug, you say, no, wait a minute. I'd rather do Panazerol for the coccidia. And he says, well, it's going to be more expensive. I'm willing to pay it because it's going to be fewer treatments and it's going to be easier on my chameleon's body.
Yep.
That's you being a partner with the veterinarian. It's not you saying, okay, you're wrong. It's saying between these choices, I am an educated client who understands the difference between those two choices, and I'm going to make this. They're not used to that. They're used to someone just coming in and saying, drugs, medicines, I have no idea what you're talking about. So they have to make assumptions. Okay, you're probably going to want the cheapest one, so I'm just going to offer that to you.
And the common name for that is Alban, right?
Yeah, Alban. Yeah, sulfadimethoxine. You'll see Alban, and then
the brand name that I commonly see people mention. But
so you understanding what your vet is saying makes you a much better advocate of your reptile's health.
Yep. And so depending upon what medication, sorry, go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, and if you can find a vet that will let you be an active participant, that's a golden opportunity. Because a lot of them, similar to us, have trust issues. So they're often encouraging you to bring the animal into them to do the fecal, to be able to do a physical exam along with the fecal. And I've found that building that trust with your vet is actually huge in that partnership. Initially, you may need to do that. And then after they get to know you as well as your animal, then you might be able to evolve into a more active partnership. But initially, they will often encourage you to come in with the animal to get your fecal rather than just send a sample in.
Let me also expound on that. They will require you to bring the animal in because they are responsible for how the medicine works on your animal, and they need a wait before they give medicine. So everything that you have to build that trust. The veterinarian is legally responsible for what the medicines that they are giving out. So do not expect you to walk in and be able to walk out with Flagyl. You need to establish that trust. They need to know that you know what you're doing before they just start saying, okay, I can trust this.
Yeah. And I think part of the work that people can do at home prior to going to the vet would be understanding that parasitic life cycle. And then depending upon what medication is chosen, how that medication is going to attack the parasite. And I think, Bill, like you say it, I think you put it in a great way, that the immune system is really your best friend here. It is your best weapon. So prior to medication and us launching into this direct parasite life cycle talk, what do both of you do for husbandry and care to ensure that parasite outbreaks don't happen?
Okay, I can start on that one.
Yeah.
The best thing that you can do, that I do, is break the life cycle. And you can do this without knowing that you have parasites. In fact, this is one reason why, if you have great hygiene, and husbandry, you may break the parasitic life cycle and never know that your chameleon has parasites because it's not getting to
The
be a
load won't get
problem.
high enough. Yeah.
And what this means is most parasites, there are a few, this isn't all of them, there are some that are a real problem, but most parasites that we deal with have the life cycle where the reproductive material comes out in the poop, goes down to the bottom of the cage. Okay, chameleons. It's easier with chameleons because they don't run through their poop. But yeah, so bearded dragons is a real problem, and amphibians in the water. Okay, so there's a lot of challenges. But if you can isolate the poop and you get rid of all of that material before a food item can walk through it, well, then you've eliminated their ability to reproduce. Obviously, you can't do anything 100%, but you can sure push the odds in your favor if you control how your animal is fed. So you don't the food doesn't have a chance to run through the poop. Okay,
feeder cup.
You have now broken the parasitic life cycle in two places. And this is something that you can do with husbandry, even if you don't know that you have that parasites in your animal.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
so that's feeder cup and then gloves when opening your feeder boxes.
And there's a lot of complications that come with it. I made it sound very simple, but the parasites have been doing this for ages. They know how to get around things. I also want to say, when you get this education, parasites are, number one, not as scary because you understand them and you understand what to do about them. But then, of course, you learn about the parasites that you can't do much about, and they become really scary, like Cryptosporidium and there's some. So anyway, double-edged sword.
Yep. And I would say, for my perspective, one of the keys is hydration. So of all of the different husbandry aspects, when you suspect a parasitic infection and you may need to do some treatment, one of the biggest factors is hydration. So if a lot of vets will talk about, if you're going to administer any treatment, hydration is key. Hydration is key before even considering any kind of treatment. So that's obviously sanitation, breaking the life cycle, but of the things that you can control, from like light, food, heat, you name it, hydration is up there. And that's just like, anybody who's worked with wild caught knows that you start with that. You start with water. You get them hydrated as the first step.
And so if you have a reptile and you might have an inclination, or you might not even know that this reptile has parasites, what would be some early indication or some early signs that your reptile might indeed have a parasite infection?
Some of the signs?
Yep.
So runny, any kind of like runny stool, smelly stool. We're talking chameleons, but it's probably generalizable. Runny stool, smelly stool, lethargy, like a sleep cycle that's off, behavioral patterns like closing their eyes before it's nighttime, diet, if their appetite changes, and yeah, those are the big ones.
Okay.
I think.
And Bill, would you like to add anything, or before we move on?
Losing weight.
Yep.
See, what's happening is the parasites, if they get out of hand, they're starting to mess up the gastrointestinal tract. And like coccidia, you got coccidia up there. They're literally destroying the parts in your intestine that are absorbing food.
Yeah, the little villi there. They destroy those cells.
And so it's a problem. Some of these parasites can start becoming large enough to have blockages of
Mhm.
the
Like
intestine.
physical block. Yeah.
Physical
Yep.
block. I once did a necropsy, and there was a ascarid that just took up the entire intestine.
Jesus.
Wow.
Did that animal end up making it, or?
Oh no! Well, I did a necropsy, and so that's how
Oh,
I
the
found
necropsy. I didn't miss the necropsy part.
Yeah, that animal did not make it. No. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Bill, but thank you both. And
Yeah.
so, if people are finding these early signs and they believe that there is a parasite issue, there are a couple testing methods that Bill, you've taught me this, either the fecal smear or fecal float, and depending upon the two, they might help you see. I would say I kind of see similar things. It's just you get a better density or prevalence idea with the fecal float. So, with these two testing methods, would you like to do one first? Would you rather do the smear first, or would you rather create the fecal float? What's kind of your go-to?
Well, I always do the smear first because I got to wait 10 minutes for the float. So I so the fecal smear is where we take the fecal material and we put a little bit on the slide directly, put a little saline solution, and then we look at it. The important thing about that is, I mean, it's got a lot of chunks and stuff,
Hmm.
but when you do that, the parasites are still alive. And there are some parasites, the flagellated protozoa, that we identify because of its movement. If it's dead, it's like very hard to see. It's like disappears into all of the
The
stuff.
debris.
So
Yeah.
we're looking for movement in the fecal smear. Now you can see the other oocysts and ova and even nematodes in the smear, but really it's for the flagellated protozoa. The fecal float, that pretty much kills things when we put a special solution that allows the reproductive material to float and get caught on a slide. And so in that one, we're able to get rid of a lot of the fecal material that could get in the way. And so it's a cleaner way to look at some of these real small things.
Yeah, because what the float is doing is it's actually separating the eggs from the debris. The eggs float to the top where your slide is, and then you're examining the eggs separated from the solution.
Hmm.
So
And I
it's
do
a
want to say
cleaner.
that. Oh, go ahead, John. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's just a cleaner slide that
Mhm.
that you're looking at.
I want to say that this can sound intimidating, but it really isn't. And there are a few things that um, people can do to take that next step. And one of them is just to continue learning. I think a great resource I know for myself was the Chameleon Academy's hunting microscopic parasite course, which is around 2 hours, and it also allows you to communicate with other individuals in the reptile community. And although it's chameleon focused, I do feel that it gives you the skills to be able to conduct both the fecal smear and float at home, and give you a background in identifying different types of parasites.
Yeah, I'll
Mhm.
say, yeah, it. So many of these parasites are common throughout all the reptile community. This course is chameleons because that's what I do, and that's who my people are. So, but everybody in my class is going and testing it on their bearded dragons and their geckos and their frogs and all that kind of stuff. And so it goes. It's not just for chameleons.
Mhm.
And I will say something about this course is it's community driven, which means that there's a community forum attached to it, and you can ask questions within the course itself that I get and I will answer, and then you can go to the forum and you can be there with me and the fellow students and the alumni, and you can see what we're doing and you can ask questions. So this isn't a digital course where you're just thrown in and you just do and you're alone. You do it at your own pace, but you've got a community around to support you with questions and share what you're finding. And we say, yeah, okay, that's what we call pollen. So
Yeah. And once you purchase the course, if you forget something, you can always go back and rewatch the
oh yeah,
videos.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they always have access to that.
Yep.
So outside of joining Bill's hunting microscopic parasite course, I would start budgeting and researching what compound microscope fits your needs. I feel like there's a bunch around the $100 mark that would suffice. And once you have your microscope, you want to start building a manageable parasite prevention routine. So whether this be a monthly check, I know for myself, I try to do a monthly check of Ozzy and Sharon. Ozzy, I found coccidia in about a year ago now. So it's just something that I routinely do. It doesn't take much time. And it's just kind of a stress-free moving forward once you find that negative test. And these were just a couple examples of micrographs or pictures that I've taken under the microscope. This specific chart right here, or pictures, shows you the treatment and amount of dosages needed to not fully, I guess you can't really say you can eradicate Isospora, but it took me 3 different doses to finally not be seeing the Isospora in the fecal matter. And so, John, do you want to speak a little bit about the shedding and just for people to understand that you might find parasites in a fecal smear or float, and then you might test again and it might be negative, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the animal itself is negative. So over a course of 3 months, like why would you see different rates or density loads of parasites?
So for Isospora, the answer is different than Coleomyria glaui. So like Isospora, the reason is because they persist in the environment and they utilize paratenic hosts. So not intermediary hosts, but they'll be on a spider or a bug or a fly or you name it. They're very good at paratenic host utilization. So they persist in the room even if you've successfully treated the animal. For Coleomyria glaui, they are in the gallbladder and sometimes have formed like an internal cyst. I don't know exactly. I can't remember the correct term, but they have a place where their life cycle is in a piece of flesh that they're utilizing for reproducing, essentially. And if you can get a negative sample, you can treat, and then that thing can break, and then they can be released post-treatment, post-fecal. So for that species, it's an internal process. For Isospora, it's an external process that would potentially result in them showing up again later, even post-fecal exam, post-treatment. So even within the family of Coccidia, there's different answers.
Okay. And Bill, would you want to add anything on before we go through the question list here?
I would just add on. This is a prime example as to how having a microscope of your own is a huge benefit. You are able to monitor the density of coccidia going down with your doses, and usually they give you 2 doses, and you knew you needed 3. Yep. So this is a way that you can monitor the progress. It's a perfect application of this education.
Yeah,
it's important to stay patient and persistent.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, it's like, so when people constantly ask me for a hydration schedule, like misting schedule, light schedule, you name it, and I have gotten to a point where I constantly push people back towards metrics, measuring their humidity, measuring their UVB, measuring their heat, not just telling them the distance in the bulb and the schedule, because those things are not as good as actually monitoring the situation and adjusting based on what you see. And that's what the microscope is in this area of husbandry.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't mean to kind of cut you off and shift, but I do want to leave some time for our audience to ask some questions. If folks want to look at this presentation, they can. There's going to be a link in the chat Savannah's going to put it in there where you can access all of the resources and platforms that we've been talking about today. So you can access Bill's Chameleon Academy course. You can access John's survey, Dr. Rachel Sue's work. So all of that will be there for you to look back on. All right, so let's go through this. Mikey says hello. Chameleon Academy showing out, Bill.
Dang straight.
Oh, Bill for president. That's not even a question, but it's a factual statement, I guess. That's a pretty good one. Godfather of chameleons. Oh, if I keep mine in a forest, I don't need to go treat for parasites. Got it.
That would be Dean Messimer.
I mean, it depends on how big that forest is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Baltimore forest isn't too big out here, so I might have to move out towards one of you guys. All right. All right. Looking. Oh, sorry. John said having.
John, have I showed off my Coccidia shirt before?
Oh my goodness, I have not seen that.
You've not seen this? Oh my!
I must have. I'm not good with lives, Bill. When you switched over to doing lives, I'm a podcast person.
Oh yeah, well you gotta see this one. Yep, there you go.
Oh, that's awesome.
The Coccidia and Jonathan, why would there be no photo available for the unsporulated coleomeria?
Because it's
parasite
inside.
humor.
It's in yeah, geez, you're killing me. Because you're gonna only see sporulated. Oh man. Okay.
That's right. It sporulates in the gallbladder.
Yeah.
There was a question. So please tell me how to avoid going scorched earth. So if you find parasites, how do you avoid freaking out and being able to calm down and do what you need to do?
You just understand what you're up against, and like we in the Chameleon Academy and our little community, we show off our pinworms, and I gotta tell you, bearded dragon pinworms are ugly. Chameleon pinworms, now that's good stuff. So it's and we're showing off our coccidia pictures, and for the longest time, poor Eliza Ann had no parasites, and so it's like once you understand the parasitic life cycle and the parasites that you're dealing with, they're not as scary. They're very manageable. You understand the beast you're working with.
Yep.
And I'll say the thing that I realized when I did the room screen was I was surprised at the number of healthy animals. They have no symptoms, but when you look at their fecal, parasites. And that rate of infection to pathogenic issue, like illness, was something like 90% healthy within the positive fecal exams. So you see positive exams, 90% of them were perfectly healthy. And that's why in the discussion of whether to treat with a vet, some vets lean towards, is there an illness? Is there a problem? Let's focus on hydration, sanitation, breaking the direct life cycle, let the immune system do its thing, because you might cause problems, like more problems with treatment than you do with adjusting the way that you're managing your husbandry. And if you do another exam in a month and you see that the load is going down, you can manage it in different ways. And so the decision to treat often is related to the symptoms that you see. How serious is it for the animal? And in many cases, the vast majority of cases, they're healthy. The infection is not life-threatening.
Mm-hmm. And this is actually a really good kind of follow-up question to that point. Is it advisable to dose reptiles without medications preemptively without even consulting a vet or a microscope?
No, in my opinion.
I know some importers do that because they're assuming there's parasites and they don't have time to check for everything. But we are not, we shouldn't take on
We're not
that.
at that scale.
Yeah, we are taking care of our individual animals, and we have the ability to figure out exactly what they have, because none of these medicines are benign. They're poisons, and they're
Yep.
just poisons at a level that affect parasites, not the chameleon, but or reptiles. Sorry, but there's but none of these medicines were developed for reptiles. They were developed for cows and chickens and stuff. And so we're trying to figure things out. For the longest, I mean, you go out into the papers and they say ivermectin will kill your reptile. Well, ivermectin at a certain dose will kill your reptile, and we just have to figure out what that dose is. So,
and most of the medicines come in a solution that says shake well. And then they have a very precise dosage that you're trying to get based on their weight. So if you think about how easy it is to make a mistake in that situation, of you end up with a concentration that is much different than you think, and then you're giving it to an animal that's either that doesn't even have an infection related to that drug, you can very easily end up with a situation that is caused by the drug itself. So the more experience you have with treating animals, the more you'll understand the risks associated with doing that, and why I would not advise it for random people who have no experience treating.
I think the best
things like metronidazole flagyl, which is very common, that does not just take care of the flagellated protozoa. It takes care of a lot of stuff, and it just can kill the balance, make your entire internal flora off balance. And so it kills the good stuff and the bad stuff. I don't like to use metronidazole. I do if I have to, but I would rather not. And I think a very important thing that we need, people watching this need to come away with, is realize that the most powerful attacker of parasites is the host's immune system. And in the case of Cryptosporidium, that's all we have. There is no medicine that will attack Cryptosporidium. It's the host's immune system that will keep things in check. And so your husbandry, your day-to-day husbandry, is the most important thing to fight off parasites.
Yep. And is always the first step. Yep.
And Mikey says, how important is it to help new reptile keepers understand the possibility of parasites in reptiles? And I feel like I have a good example of this. So I learned how to run these tests from the Chameleon Academy and Bill. And when I'm thinking about vending at expos and what is going to be my mark within the community, what do I want to bring to the table? What have I learned from my role models and mentors? And going to these shows, I offer testing. So it's just a small fee, and really it's a lesson. Like I try to, I'm like a disciple of Bill. I'm like, okay, like I have biology background. I have this background from the parasite hunting course, and I would love to teach you. And so I think people are willing to come and interact and like have this conversation. And recently I was at an expo and someone came up and they have a Jackson's chameleon they bought from PetSmart. They had it for 2 years, started acting lethargic, and they were just wondering what was going on. And I looked at the feces under microscope, and before you know it, there's the nematode ova. And so that person was able to go to the vet. The vet prescribed Panicure, and at this point, I got an email recently that the Jackson's chameleon's back to its normal self, walking around the enclosure and eating all those crickets. So
awesome, man.
Yeah. But for you two, like in your own respective roles within the community, like how important is it for you?
For me as an educator, it's important, I think, that people don't panic, that they understand that parasites need to be taken seriously, but they're not the end of the world. It's something I want to bring a sense of, there's something to manage, that they're part of keeping reptiles. So if you have a reptile that has parasites, it's not the end of the world.
Mhm.
We deal with it. It is important to deal with it, take it seriously.
Yep.
But don't panic. Don't just cry out and go on social media and have a meltdown. You just go to the vet, say, okay, I've got this problem. And you now need to understand enough that you can change the husbandry, work with the hygiene, but it's just part of keeping reptiles.
Yep.
Yeah. I see it very similar to, like, if you acquired reptile that's dehydrated, you need to understand how to read the signs, make sure that they have the right hydration, and move forward. It's obviously an important thing, but it's one of many things that you should learn and be comfortable managing when you have reptiles.
And this is actually,
Especially given the prevalence rates, it's not like it's a choice. It's
no. And I don't know the answer to this question, but Bill and John, you might know this. Are there valid studies supporting the use of probiotics with reptiles?
I do not know of any.
Okay.
Me neither, but I do throw some probiotic powder into my calcium mix from time to time.
Okay.
And it doesn't seem to be a problem, that's for sure.
Okay. So that you haven't seen any negative effects of it.
Yeah, but I take probiotics, and my wife has been telling me not to, because there's no evidence that they help in humans.
Well,
But I continue. I still do it. So
Saying like bee pollen. We've been doing it since what, the 80s, but
yeah,
I've never noticed a difference either way.
So
yeah, and actually, Phil from Arids Only posted something recently about bee pollen and bee pollen concentration, and how, depending upon how much bee pollen you use, it could have negative consequences rather than positive effects. So,
yes.
All right, and then I know we're right at the end here, so I'm just trying to go through the last couple. All right, are there ever that we did that one?
I do want to share a story that says about how prevalent parasites are. I was quite embarrassed because I was not able to get a picture of an Isospora coccidia oocyst, and my students had beautiful Isospora coccidia oocysts, and it was very interesting because I was dealing with wild caught and they were dealing with captive hatched. Is there a something to be learned there? I don't know, but
yes, much higher in captive bred.
For me to get a picture of, finally get a picture of a good Isospora, which by the way is right here. See? There we go.
Got it.
Did you take
How
that?
Did I get it? I went to my local pet store and I got bearded dragon poop.
Nice.
And, and they know me well enough that they don't ask questions. You want what? All right, fine. And so I got bearded dragon poop from the pet store so I could get pictures of some beautiful Isospora coccidia.
Yep. And that's one species that the prevalence rate is lower in wild caught, for sure.
Interesting.
No question about it. Much
was
higher
very
in captive bred.
Strange that all the people who were reporting Isospora were with captive hatched, and I was working with wild caught and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in my wild caught.
Were nematodes?
Sure. Yamiria? Sure.
Were nematodes the most prevalent parasite you guys are finding when you're wild caughts? Where you find like a diverse amount of parasites, so not just one, but you might find 2 or 3 different species.
Yeah.
Okay. I found pinworms a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. And like I said, we have a gallery of pinworms of the dual nucleus, and
finding an adult
you get
nematode. Oh my gosh.
Well, you get things like filarial worms in the skin of wild caught that you'll never see in a captive bred animal.
Okay.
So yeah.
And will things like that eventually have a negative effect on long-term health, or will that symbiotic relationship just kind of like hang in the balance and both organisms will be okay?
The problem is when it gets out of balance. And so, the filarial worms, I mean, I've got a chameleon right now with filarial worms. I literally ordered a chameleon from an importer and I asked him for one with filarial worms. I don't care what species, just send me. I ordered parasites from my
And
That's like the opposite of what we're
he's
trying to do.
it's like, I need to learn how to do surgery.
Yeah, someone
So, well, I wanted to document it. I took it to my vet, and we did this, and
Okay.
I documented it. But I mean, she's doing great. But
Did you document the removal of the flare worm?
yeah. Oh, hey.
Oh, I need to see this.
was there like a how do those even, is there a medication that you would give, or is there like a surgery that
It's an incision and you can remove it from the
Yeah,
skin.
I don't know if you can see all those little filarial worms there.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, the vet, Dr. Tom Greek, went in and allowed me to
That's pretty cool.
film him making little incision and pulling these things out.
Pulling the worms out. Oh, I have to see the video.
Is that on the
and somebody may ask, well, wait a minute, doesn't Panicure handle that? Well, here's where you start learning. Fenbendazole, Panicure, and the pyrantyl pamoate, they actually, the reason why they're so safe is they mostly stay in the intestines. They don't get into the bloodstream, so they will be very effective for worms that are inside the intestines.
Roundworms, pinworms.
They're not going to be effective for any of these other nematodes that are anywhere else in the body, and that's why you may continue with nematodes even if you treat with Panicure, and then only then your vet is going to say, we may have to try ivermectin or levamisole, or things that actually get into the bloodstream. And so these are some things that you will understand when you learn about this.
Yep.
And actually, someone in the chat says, one of Wild Horses 446 says, one of my vets suggested after worming to give probiotics. So there is another person that is giving probiotics after deworming. Mikey says, with all the hype with Tinley, can you imagine a symposium with Tyler and John, next level for all the content creators parading around? I don't know. I did actually. This talk was, I originally proposed it to NARBC Tinley in hopes to create some educational programming. Mikey says, Bill has inspired me to ask my local big box store for some reptile nuggets. They think I'm weird.
You'll find that people who go through the course actually start feeling bad when they can't find anything in their reptiles. It's like, oh, well, congratulations. Yeah, but I want to find something. So yeah, sometimes we have to go and to the pet stores and find something.
Yep.
Nice.
All right. And we're out of time. I do want to respect both of your rest of your evening. We can go into overtime. People wanted it, but I didn't want to, I know people have lots outside of it.
Are there other questions? I have time, but
okay. Let me look through one more time.
That's right. Okay, let's see. Alicia says the dose size, it scares me. Sometimes they're not fans of taking it. Yeah, when you have to actually dose, if your reptile doesn't want to open their mouth, it can be traumatic.
Yeah, so actually that is a good question. How do you both administer medication for chameleons and other reptiles that you might have had experience with?
Well, each one is different. They really are. And once it'll be really easy to get the first one down, but once they figure out what you're up to, they won't open.
Some of them are just clenched. They clench down after the first time. They figure it out, and they can be. It's like I've had a couple do that to me, Bill. But sometimes what I've done is I switch it up, and I'll go for like an early morning or nighttime dosage where they're a little bit more surprised and not prepared. Then they tend to open their mouth, and versus like they can see me coming and they're just like,
Yeah, I have in the past dosed when they were asleep.
Okay.
Because then when you gently grab them, don't grab them, but you gently put pressure, light pressure.
Their natural reaction is to open
their head. Their first reaction is
yeah,
and so squirt, and then okay, I'm bad. Just a bad dream.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't even need to take them off the branch. Usually, like they could stay right on the branch, and sometimes they don't even seem to wake up. They just kind of stay in place.
Ozzy, I have this heat gun. It's yellow on the outside, and once Ozzy sees that, he opens his mouth. He won't open his mouth up for anything else other than crickets. But when he sees that heat gun, I would just hold it up and, administer there, and it was fine.
For Jude, it was a purple vacuum that he absolutely hated, and so I would just, whenever I needed him to fire up or open his mouth, I could just bring that purple vacuum over, and he would go for it. But
chameleons are quirky like that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And actually, Panicure is one of the few you can apply to bugs, right? That was one of the questions. I have applied the Panicure to the back of like crickets and roaches. I don't know if that has worked for you guys, but
the problem with that is you never know how much is going to get inside of them. The actual, it depends on what kind of reptile you're working with. Yep. Like a chameleon, there's an impact that, the tongue comes out, boom. And so you don't know how much is going to actually get back in. But I know some people have tried that and have said that it has worked.
Yep.
So whatever it takes.
It might be more like it's a really difficult animal to administer. Then you could resort to something like that, but it's definitely not the first option.
Yeah, like with the small like Trioceras honella I have, I was just so worried that I was gonna hurt them by squeezing.
Yeah, they're so small.
So I would just.
Although I will say, if you're going to do that with a drug, Panicure is the one to do it with, because it's got such a high
tolerance,
high safety, and so
the tolerance range is big on that one.
Yeah,
and
I mean, something like ivermectin, you don't want to do that.
Oh no, you don't. Yeah, you be very careful with that thing. And everybody, we all, the poor vets, they are working hard to figure this out. This is all experimentation, because there's no drug that's been made for reptiles. So they're taking horse warmers and figuring out how to apply it to something that's 15 grams. So there's a lot, and is ectothermic and totally different species. And so there's a lot of guessing that's going on here. And your vet is the holder of all of the information that reptile vets have attempted. Oh, that didn't work out so well. Attempted again. Oh, that worked. So I'll put that into a paper. So it's everybody's figuring this out.
And actually, Mikey asks, is there a screening method that either you use to find a good vet? So because there's not many, what steps do you go through to try to find a good one?
Well, a good reptile vet, someone who knows reptiles. I'll say, as far as parasites, many of our vets don't necessarily do it at their location. They send it out to a lab. So, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So as far as parasite goes, just somebody who's willing to deal with it.
Yeah. I think,
and I will say, you can even, because of that situation, if you have a problem with parasites, you don't necessarily need a reptile vet. If you're in a rural situation where you've got one vet in a 100-mile radius, and that one vet is saying, okay, I will take your fecal sample. I will either send it to the lab or look at it myself, because pinworm ova, it doesn't take a genius or special training to do that. He's got that training. They've got that training, and they've got all of the charts. And so you don't need a vet that understands reptile husbandry to be able to help you with parasites. You just have someone who's willing to dig into the information that they have access to. So it's not like there's a special password or key. They just have to be willing to do it.
Okay. And this, I believe, NextGuard. Savannah's saying there's a lot of promise with NextGuard SP, but there aren't any studies supporting safety in animals less than 200 milligrams. I think it may have also been more so for ectoparasites, or 2 grams. Sorry, not milligrams, 2 grams, 200 grams.
All right, so your Parsons fine.
Yeah, outside the range for. I haven't heard of that, but I'll have to look into it.
And sorry to skip around a little bit, but back to Mikey's question. I think for me, moving to Baltimore, it was just talking with people in the community, going to reptile shows, talking with my vet that I bring my dog to and saying, hey, do you recommend anybody? And so for us, it's Stall Exotics, which is, I might actually, John, do you go to Stall? Okay, that's more in like I think it's Pennsylvania. So
Okay.
it was around you, but I think just asking, communicating with other people in the community, looking at reviews online, and trying to get a good sense of really kind of like the best direction for you and your animal.
Yeah, it's not hard to develop an expertise in your species that your vet does not have. That's why that partnership, I think, is probably a good way to approach it, because you can very quickly specialize and learn and contribute in a way that is very productive. And I know that as a breeder, one of the things that we tragically get to do is see many of those interactions across the country between our customers and their vets.
Yep.
And sometimes the vets don't have the experience, they don't have the expertise, and they get advice that is not sound. And vets are, to Bill's point, still learning through listening to conversations like this, what the best practice is, and how we manage risks, how we treat successfully. And so that's, again, I think a reason why we need to continue this conversation, continue to share our experience, because vets can listen, vets can learn, and vets can continue to share that information within their community, just like we do in ours.
Yeah. And I haven't, oh, sorry.
Yeah, we all have a great advantage that we have these micro communities that can focus on chameleons. I do chameleons. That's what I do. That's what I've been doing for decades. And we have the ability to have somebody, a lot of somebodies who can do chameleons for decades, who can do bearded dragons for decades, geckos for decades, and different geckos, tokay geckos for decades, crested geckos. And so we have these little niche communities that get insanely good at husbandry. And this is a huge resource. When you go to a vet, realize that they have access to some papers that may be 20 years old. They will be very confident about that. And if you're requiring them to give you husbandry information, they may try. And there are some vets that don't respect the husbandry, the hobby community. And there are some vets that say, okay, those people know what they're talking about a lot more than I do, because I don't study this niche reptile for decades and decades. I deal with all reptiles. So we shouldn't expect the vets to have in-depth knowledge about our niche reptile, whichever they are. They are there. They have medical background, the medicine. They know how the anatomy. They know how the bodies work. That's their expertise, and that's what we go to them for.
Yeah, and I think that the podcast with Rachel, where she's just talking about her experience in becoming a vet, was a valuable insight, because I never knew that vets get paid differently depending upon what species they work with. So even like when Rachel was talking about going through her program, it's like, vets got to make a decision. Are you going to work with these niche species, not make as much money, or are you going to be working with cats and dogs and be able to make a little bit more? And, for whatever factors people choose, there is that challenge. And so that partnership, like you guys are saying, is extremely valuable. And there's been multiple vets that have passed by the booth at expos and been like, oh my God, like this exists. And, I'll send them to the Chameleon Academy, or I'll show them, John's survey. And they're like, what? Like, this is amazing. Like I haven't had one vet yet come by and be like, you shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah. It's the vets learn about the reptiles the way we do. Can you imagine what a vet school would look like if they had a class for chameleons, a class for bearded dragons, a class for anacondas? I mean, that would be heaven.
I would have been a vet. I would have been a vet, I think, is the answer to that. Yeah.
No. And Savannah says, seconding Bill, sometimes my vet has to reference similar species when it comes to things like blood work. So it's not perfect, but it's what we have, and also better than blind guesses.
Yeah, and they're smart.
Yep.
They're working on this problem just like we are. So
Mhm.
yeah, don't think that you can go to YouTube and replace your vet. That doesn't exist. I know there's people out there saying, I can learn. I had someone trying to do surgery in their apartment. It's like, no, YouTube is not
Don't do that.
a substitute.
Yep. No, don't be doing at-home surgeries. Don't do that.
Yeah, please don't.
All right. So we're gonna wrap up overtime here. Let you guys get back to whatever you else are doing. I just wanted to say thank you to both of you. This was kind of like a full circle moment, both like as John as someone who I presented with on this, and then Bill as like your disciple and someone who was interviewed on Chameleon Academy. So to have both of you here for my first webinar hosting and like going through all of my my hurdles and challenges, I appreciate you both just being patient, providing just a wealth of knowledge to our viewers. And please, for those people that are watching this, go check out Jon at iPardalis. Go check out Bill at the Chameleon Academy. They're doing some really phenomenal work in moving the community forward. So they're really just two individuals that you want to have in your life. And I also want to shout out Savannah. Savannah is the man behind the curtain today. She's pulling all of the strings and keeping it down in the chat for us. Happy Dragons is the host here. So it's a platform where people can come together, have like-minded discussions, and really move the needle forward in terms of husbandry and care, centered around scientific research. And if either of you can give your little send-off if you'd like, and we can wrap it up and say goodbye.
Yeah. I want to say, everybody, thank you for showing up and being active in the chat and keeping us company here and asking some good questions. We had a lot of fun. That's what lives are all about.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yep.
And by the way,
I would just say
you can buy this Coccidia t-shirt on the Chameleon Academy .com, and it's a great conversation at these Christmas parties.
Zoe, my wife, if you're watching this, that's the Christmas gift I want.
Along
with
I think you just made 2 sales at least. Yeah, but no, I'll just say, Tyler, you're doing a great job, man.
Appreciate
it. It's been fun to watch you as you get into the hobby, as you start to become a chameleon breeder and contribute at such an early stage in that process. I'm in a couple of breeder chats, with other breeders, and I brag about you in the chats. It's just not being like, yeah, that's Tyler. He's local. He's doing some really cool stuff. And so thank you for continuing to involve me in your work. So.
Oh, also always my man. I got so much love for you guys. So
yeah, and it's awesome what you did with the knowledge and the education that you got from the course, and you've taken it out into the shows, and now you're doing this seminar series. This is what it's all about. This is awesome.
Yeah,
appreciate you. Learn from the best.
Sounds good to me.
My guys. All right, I appreciate you all. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your night, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
See y'all.
See you later.